Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. And I have to apologise for Shawn. He ran out of the country as soon as he could because he knew about this talk. No. So Shawn's in Denmark. I was hoping Shawn would turn up, but a couple mornings ago or evenings ago, he flew to Denmark to be with his family. So I'll take the lead, but we've been working on this for a while, and certainly with Susan and a few others in the university, and this is now founded, sort of supported by the new Fieldwork digitization facility we built over the last couple of years. That's very much a set of equipment, as I said a second ago. So this is my least designed presentation of the day. So I thought I'd keep it simple to close the day. So just for those that don't know, so photogrammetry is fairly recent. Let's be blunt. Like, you could say it's been around 20 years, but in reality, it's a bit over 10 years since Pix 4D and Agisoft really hit the scene where we could start to do this properly. Reality capture was 5 years ago, so it's a new thing, and it's a new thing that is being used more and more. But being a new thing, we've been learning for the last 10 years to do it right. And certainly, as you saw this morning, I'm trying to formulate processes around object scanning to scale that. This covers the other side, which is fieldwork. So fieldwork is sort of before object work in photogrammetry. Fieldwork's where it came from with GIS and mapping. Certainly moved into heritage and archaeology, and nowadays is using it for everything. We're scanning the world. So I'm going to go through 9 case studies. I don't have the top 10. I won't do anything so glib again. But I'm going to go through some case studies, and I want to talk about lessons, and I want to talk about ways we shoot and ways we do it. So hopefully at the other end of this, you can have a good understanding. And all of this is working towards trying to build a set of protocols so people do this more in the field, quite simply said. So the first one I'll go through is this site in Perhora, and this is one I worked on with Shawn and Susan and a bunch of students. This is an output of that site. I'm going to talk about working in loops today, and you'll hear me say that enough times that I think you'll learn it by the end. But it's about structured photography. This was a large work area, so it's planning out an area, working over multiple days. So this was actually something that took 4 to 5 days. And there's a few reasons for that, mainly to exploit the morning shade. So you're either working against the sun or you're working with controlled lighting. And one way to do controlled lighting is outside of the sun hours. So this scale was done on this site from a total station survey, but it doesn't have to be. This did require a lot of clearance of the site first, and certainly when you're working on sites, you want to clear them first. And this was an exercise in working fast, but working well. So I'll jump to this, and I'm going to show sort of these for a lot of the case studies I showed today. This is nuts. I've done a talk on this before. I'll drop the link into the chat a little bit later. But Shawn and his team took over 26,000 photographs of this site, which is crazy. No one should do that many photographs. Out of that, over 26,000 aligned out of 26,500, and all of these things, I'm going to show you these little, alignment numbers. But basically, what it means is that they were taken in a structured way, so you can see structure there. I'm sure you can all see that. There's lines. There's a pattern to the way they're shot. They're certainly shot at different heights, as you can see over here. They're shot in rows, and they're shot on different angles if you look closely. So it's something to learn about when we do this. If I actually show some of the examples of this, so there's the house itself. This was an early sort of example, but it's the kind of thing now where we can come right in and we can get some fairly significant details. So this was a very early model. And there's a video there that I'll drop in the link. I've done a talk on this for the CAA conference last year that really talks about using reality capture on this. We ended up generating orthos, so things like this, where you can zoom in, and we actually use this as a collaboration tool, where Shawn was over in Denmark at the time, and he was telling me about these total station marks. So we were using this to find those little total station markers that are across this site. So this is a deep zoom platform we wrote for that. So as a site, it's wonderful. There's an amazing model, but no one can do this. It's too much. So by too much, multiple days shooting, 26,000 photos. This took a day to align. The model at normal quality took 22 days on a high-end processing node. That's an expensive model. Okay, so that's an expensive model in compute. It's an expensive model in time, but we need a better way. is it. So the next one I'll show, this is one I did with Shawn where we started to get down to our protocols. So this is a site in the Blue Mountains. This one was working in loops. So it's a simplified version of the protocol we're developing. So where you try and capture the whole site and details. It was working quickly. So this was under a canopy. So there was no hard sun, thankfully. You can see there's a scale bar in shot, but this was a time sensitive one. It was right after the bushfires. So the site had been cleared by a bushfire. It was the kind of one that couldn't have been done otherwise. So if you look at this one, we end up with a cloud like this. It kind of looks like a swarm of bees around it, which to me is still kind of unstructured. Okay, there's a lot of photos, 755, aligned out of 757. So the alignment worked really well, but it's still, there's a lot of photos there. So that took a long time and there's no real structure to them. So the fact that it aligned is because of overlap, not because of structured photography. And that's, what we need to start to learn when we do this. So that one there, there's the hearth. I mean, it's a wonderful, wonderful model. It came up, amazing. We were getting ferns and all kinds of details. But possibly went a bit too far when we look at photography itself on something like this. So the next one is at the other end of the spectrum. So I worked on this with Brian Bolson-Santon a couple of years ago, and then I worked on it with Joe Stefan, a photographer. So I never been to Israel, by the way. I've never been to a lot of these sites. I do work on the data that comes back, but this was working in a single loop, wide angle to capture the whole site in each shot. Uncontrolled lighting, so you have to shoot it really quickly. It took all of 5 minutes to shoot each one of these, and it was repeated daily. So this is an idea that once we get this right, we can repeat it, and we can actually use it as a snapshot. So the purpose should drive the process, quite simply put. This was to create a snapshot of the site. So, to do something like this, it wasn't many shots. Our first test one was 19 shots. We took 19 photos and we created a snapshot of the site. Right? Anyone can take 19 photos. The second time we went, when I was working with Joe, that's a shot of 45 photos on the right there. You can see the photos the way they are above that. You can see how they're full shots of the site, right? From leading sandbag to closing sandbag. That's all it is, one ring. And she did the same thing at 9 a.m. every morning before everyone turned up to the dig. So, with that one, we ended up with these kind of examples. What's really cool is because we did it at 9 a.m. every morning, these are a temporal set. So you can actually see a date on them. That's the 30th of the 1st, 2019, the 31st of the 1st. We have a snapshot of that site over dig days, right? Which becomes an incredible thing we can do that you can't do with 26,000 photos. But if you actually look at these, this is the one done with 19. It's a really good snapshot of the site, right? For 19 photos. So, you're not going to measure a bit and do it all perfectly, but for knowing the way that site was that day, perfect, right? So that's a method that isn't overkill, that works really well. And this is one of the ones Joe did that just came up fantastic, which is really just a single ring to the point where you can read all the markers and you had, scale bars and all of that there. But again, it was working in loops. So this one, when you come back here, it was working in a loop. Right? The reason it's not in the foreground here, that was actually between pits. So you couldn't walk in that area. So that's why it's a half loop. But working in loops is one of the keys here. And then wide angle is better than tight. If all you're going to do is one angle, do wide angle is the answer. This is an interesting one. So this one was one that was done at Vaucluse. It's the pyramid method I'll go into in a second. So it was working in rows, so rather than loops. So you walk down the length, and then you walk back, and then you walk down the length. So I did 3 rows, and then I did some reference pyramid shots. And I had scale from a laser scan on this one. So here's an example. So the top there is, you can see the 3 rows. And by pyramid method, I mean, there's a close-up row that's looking on an angle, okay? So you can see that in the top right there, the close-up row looking on an angle. There's a mid row coming the other way, looking at the other angle. Then there's one a bit further back again, looking straight on. And then there's a bunch that are a ways back, right? So it's a pyramid. You've got a stack of sizes for alignment. And certainly working in a single line like this, those ones at the back are really important for alignment and for accuracy, but then I don't use them to make the model. So you can see there, I've turned them off in Agisoft to actually make the model, but they're essential for alignment. Because you can't align without them. So sometimes taking an alignment set is a trick that we need to learn. So, if you come into those, there's a bunch of lighthouse ones you can have a look at. There's the wall itself. So we ended up with the full wall which is straight, which is, a great example. We even made some details, I believe. Yeah, there's a detail. And then that's really, 3 or 4 photos going each way. It's all of a 10-minute shoot. But what's really impressive is this, which is the ortho. So this is, I think it's 128,000 pixel ortho wide, where you can come in here and you can zoom right in and now look at that wall. And we gave this back to the Sydney Harbour Federation Trust as a record, because they were going for money to reconstruct this wall. It's actually a Francis Greenway wall. It's the original convict architect. It's dug up on site sandstone. It is an over 200-year-old retaining wall, one of the oldest in Australia. So it's an important piece of heritage to snapshot like this, and it's probably degraded since then. So this was a great way to take a quick snapshot of something we were doing. And we did it when we were doing this. So we did a big lighthouse project. I made a glib comment earlier about, is it easier to get funding with a boat in your logo for Flinders, for maritime archaeology? Well, we've got a lighthouse in our logo, and that's why we did this project. It was a great way to say, here's the Macquarie Lighthouse. So as part of that, we ended up doing this one. And I'm not going to go into the lighthouse itself today, but fieldwork stuff. So we shot this cliff with a drone. It was shooting in a grid. It was flown by a pilot that wasn't automated. And certainly when you get into mapping, you do it automated. When you want to make a model, you do it with a pilot. It's quite simple. So it was laser scan assisted. I'll come into that in a second. Working quickly with uncontrolled lightings. Whenever you're in the sun, you have to work fast because the sun moves, and the scale was from the laser scan. So if you actually look at the layout here, so, this is not what a grid would shoot. This is how we would do it if it was an object in front of us, or if it was a wall in front of us. And that's the way you have to treat drones when you're doing field work of something irregular like this. Different if it was a flat site. If it was a flat site I wanted a map of, I'd fly a drone flight path. But this one, I certainly had a pilot, Joe, fly this. It was amazing. And she just did a great job. And the top right there, you can see the laser scan positions. They come in as little cubes into reality capture when you do laser scans. So I'll skip over that one. But we spoke about Kira's work earlier. You might have heard Kira's work earlier. Working in rings in a structured way. She had fixed lighting. So she actually had lighting inside a cave. So you can take your time to a degree. So here's some of Kira's alignments from the one she showed today, which was the Marfeng post. So this is the one after it had been dug up. So this one here, you can see Kira very much worked in arcs. So she'd stand in one spot and she's structured, take photos moving up, move a meter, take photos moving up, move a meter, and go around the cave like that, which is a really good way to work. So out of that set, 812 out of 849 aligned, right? So working structurally and working in a way like in a grid, they align. Where they shouldn't, look at the photo. There's lights in shot. This is a photo that aligned. If you look bottom right there, these all aligned. You see the little green dots on these. You see some didn't, most did out of this. And go have a look at the model. It's absolutely fine, right? So that's just another one to think about. And I'm conscious of time, so I have posted this link to all of Kira's caves. We did a redux, by the way. So I originally did them in Agisoft when I was first learning in September 2018. I reduxed them all in reality capture. A couple of years later, and I just got better quality out of the same source photos. So have a look at those and have a look at the Redux as well. This is one that we did at Macquarie. This is it's a cottage on Macquarie, we call it. It's probably not a cottage. Don't know what it is, but it's the only building left on campus that predates the university. This was a hard one. Me and Jan Tristan did this. It took us a few days. We had to keep going back and doing pickups. It was uncontrolled lighting, so you can see the sun there. It was early morning. We didn't use a drone. We did it all with a pole cam, right? The painter's pole and a Wi-Fi controlled camera. We had laser scans. They didn't really work. But in the end of the day, it was a tricky one because if you look bottom right, there's a fence around it. So how do you do photogrammetry when you can't get a wide shot? This was an exercise in that. So you can see the fence is all of half a meter away from it. You might ask, why is there a fence around it? Well, it's to stop kids getting into it. And it's also, if you look at the center bottom, it's got wooden lintels, for God's sake. This was built by the farmer himself, we believe. And wooden lintels are certainly not a safe thing when you're dealing with a structure like this. But we did end up taking a structured approach. But the trick was that Jan had quite a small camera and we were shooting through the grid. right? So it was close up only. So there was it was laser scan assisted when you have something like this. So if you come to look at that cottage, when you look at it, it is wonderful. It's awesome in VR as well, that cottage. I'll just skip through the rest. So Vulcania was another one I did. I did this as a commercial job for the Caldor Public Art Project. So we drove out to Vulcania. I took drone pilot again. This was about working on the ground and with drones. So on the ground, I was running around with my Canon and taking shots on the ground while I had a drone pilot doing rows. Right? So you can see all these rows from the drone pilot on the shot there, and then all the ground cameras. The trick is to make sure you get some drone shots from the ground. If you only have drone shots from above, shots from the ground, they won't align. Okay, so it's about building that bridge between media when you're shooting both drones and ground shots. And again, I'm shooting in rows. So on the right there, you can see rather than standing in one spot and taking photos everywhere and moving, I do the opposite. I'll walk shooting sideways, and then I'll walk shooting forwards, and then I'll walk shooting backwards, and I'll walk. So you end up with all of these passes that you can see there. So it's very much a structured approach. And out of 1380 shots, 1378 align first go. Right? So if you do it right and you understand how you do your overlap, you actually get good alignment. And then the last one, so this is the last one I'll go through, which is really an application of the method. It's one I did recently when I first bought my new Canon. I wanted to test it out. I shot this in 6 minutes. 6 minutes, I took just 500 photos, right? So 100 photos a minute, or 80 photos a minute, which is less than a second each. And again, walking structured. So I walked one way, looking forward, walked back, looking the other way, walked looking sideways, and so on, to actually end up with, in 6 minutes, what is, if I jump straight through to that one, what is a good quick scan. And it only worked because I had an R5, so I could shoot that fast. But that ended up being quite a good scan using this method. So just to summarize, because I know I'm right on out of time, so the protocols themselves, what we're coming up with is these. So how to shoot, optics and lighting concerns, how to deal with data, hardware questions, and then management questions. So shooting techniques, pretend to be a camera robot. I think you get that now. There's all these kind of rules around what to do. Motion matters. It's really important. This is called structure from motion for a reason. If only optical physics didn't exist, but it does. So you've got to keep everything in focus, and you need to know motion blur, and you need to do it fast, and diffraction's bad, and so on and so on and so on. So you need to master this stuff. So we need protocols for that. A dish made with raw ingredients, shoot raw. There's so many reasons to shoot raw. There's a few there. At some stage, if you're interested in contributing to this, let's have a good chat about why we shoot raw, but shoot raw. Really simply put, use a pro camera. Can't just use my iPhone. Well, you can, but use a pro camera. I said earlier, it's about mastering optical physics. You don't do that with an iPhone. You do that with a pro camera, and megapixels matter. And proper planning prevents poor performance. The old classic management of all of this. You want to be thorough and efficient. You don't want to overshoot, but you don't want to undershoot. You need to make sure you walk away and you can deliver a shot, and then stop, collaborate, and listen. If you're doing this with multiple people and multiple pipelines, so work together. So where to from here? We're developing a protocol, talking about all these things about how you do this actually and how you plan this. And here's my call to action: that what we actually want to do is write the Australian Field Guide to Photogrammetry. So if you want to collaborate on that, I know a lot of people here will. Please do contact myself and Shawn. We want to hear from you. We want to run some protocols by you. We're interested in developing some fieldwork training, like I said, through MQ 3D Scan Corp. So that's open to expression of interest right now. Please do contact us. And as I always promise, I will post the links in the chat. Any questions?
Thank you, Michael. Lots of really valuable information, and we've got quite so many technical questions for you. So
I can hang around and answer them maybe in the chat. I know we've
got 5 minutes until the next and last presentation, so maybe we can answer a few, and then you move to the chat. So the first question is, John, can this process supersede some aspects of total station?
Yes. Look, what do you use total station? The question. You use it for scale, you use it for orientation, and you use it for location. If you don't need all those three things, you don't need total station. If you just want scale, there's other ways to do it. If you just want orientation, there's other ways to do it with spirit levels and stuff like that. It's only really where you want it located in the world do you really need a total station. What we found, especially with Shawn's one, we were getting better accuracy than total station anyway, when we actually did the tests and did the alignment.
So Hafizur got two questions, and I think that John already just responded to him. So the first one, what 3D viewer you used for the online viewing? Sorry,
it's all the links are in the chat. It's all Pedestal. I show everything on Pedestal. I'm lucky because I invented a platform for this, so I just use that.
Yeah. Would you like to go ahead, Susan?
Yeah, just to address that, because okay, so this project is directed by myself and my Greek colleague, Panayota Kasimi, who's the E4 of that area. She's the director of archaeology in that area. And what we did was we didn't get a total station at all. We hired a guy who comes with a staff. Like, this is the next step, right? You don't need a total station. You need a guy with a staff who communicates with, you know, the satellites up above, and he just puts it down on a point, and the information comes into his machine, which then he downloads as a cloud, and then he sends to us for a fee. So that's how that was done, actually. Yeah, I just hired somebody.
And we did locate it in the field. So that it is important if you want to locate your data and publish it with your proper you know, coordinates in the GIS space. So it is important for that. But a lot of the time, I think people are using it, especially in the Egyptian sense, for scale and for working at horizon. There's other ways to do that.
Thank you, Susan and Michael. There is another question from Tom. When you say wide angle, what are you talking?
Lens angle. So I shoot on a 24-70. The answer is that, you know, it's better to shoot at 24 than it is to zoom in and shoot at 70. So wherever possible, zoom out as far as you can, and you'll get a better alignment, because photogrammetry works with distortion, and distortion's better at a wide angle, right? So that idea that, you know, the fisheye, that's how photogrammetry works. So the more you zoom in, the less information you're giving to photogrammetry. So wide angle is better than tight in the protocols.
So the second question from Hafizur, it's wondering what 3D viewer you used for online viewing 3D Hope?
No, so Pedestal 3D. As I said, it's Pedestal. It's a platform we developed at Macquarie, spun out into a startup, and now it's 100% owned by myself and two other co-founders. So if you're interested in Pedestal 3D, please drop me a line.
Then Samuel is asking, as well as repatriation, can you see this technique being utilized in the future or archaeology when considering rescue and salvage archaeology?
Yes, indeed. Not just that, but rapid prototyping in the field for object work. So dealing with sherds is something that, you know, we find hundreds of sherds in the field. And we're looking at angle measurement, you know, with sort of 3-point circles in pedestal, like how do you do that in the field? A lot of the time now we're talking about digging something up, scanning it, burying it again. So, you know, the more and more we can make these processes portable and quick in the field, the better job we can actually do as archaeologists to generate that data when we need to and quickly.
And just
that answers the question.
And just a quick last question from Tom. What kind of settings are you using with your camera to get so many quick shots, automatic or manual?
I have so many answers to that. I shoot everything manual. It's again why I shoot raw, because I need latitude. So I shoot with latitude, but I shoot everything manual, manual focus, wide angle. Look, contribute to the protocols. That's the stuff we need to all learn, because then, you know, I guess the thing to finish on is that slide, and I did touch over it, was the actual concept that, you know, to do this, you work with people. You know, you don't, you know, Kira took the photos, I processed it. In Israel, Brian and Joe took the photos and they came back here for me to process. Like with Shawn and Susan took the photos, we processed them at Macquarie while they were overseas. It's building pipelines with people. So don't think you have to learn it all yourself. What we need is more people doing bits of the process. And we need people to learn bits of the process so we can scale this. because this is it's like a filmmaking. You don't make a film by yourself. You do it with a crew. We need to be building crews for photogrammetry.
That's such a great point. Michael, thank you so much